Well, I think the 10-second warning has now elapsed, so I'm going to say good evening, colleagues, and good evening, anyone who's watching us live this evening on YouTube. And I propose to begin our meeting this evening of the Planning Committee of Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. I'm going to take the agenda as printed. And that means item 1 is apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Reddish. I know that Councillor Holland has also sent his apologies, and Councillor Sweeney is substituting for him. Do we know of any other apologies this evening? In that case, we'll proceed to item 2 of our agenda, which is declarations of interest. Does any member this evening wish to make a declaration of interest? And again, I'll assume that silence means that no one does wish to make such a declaration. We'll proceed to item 3 of our agenda, minutes of previous meetings, printed for you on our agenda this evening on pages 3 to 14. Again, are members content that they are a correct record of our previous proceedings? And again, looking round the room, I see no dissent from that, so I'm going to take those minutes as approved. That brings us to our first substantive item this evening, on which I note there is a supplementary report as well as a full report. So that's the Lancaster Buildings, High Street, Newcastle. And before I open the item for debate, I'll ask our officers if there's any further information we need to know this evening.
No, Chair, nothing further.
Thank you very much. In that case, I invite comment from members. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, this is something I think we need to get on with and get it done as quickly as possible. And I certainly support it, and I think we should support the action and get it started as soon as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been in and out on over quite a few months now, and I think that, as Councillor Sweeney has alluded to, I think it's time to move this on and put it to bed. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I think it should progress, but I am aware that Corp had mentioned about a ramp, and there is a suggestion from the officers that this could be brought to another application. So could you just explain how that would work? Would it be possible to understand how that would work?
I'll ask our officer to fill you in now, Councillor, on that.
Well, a ramp doesn't form part of this current application, and it would require planning permission. So, and a further application would need to be made for the ramp.
So it just seems to me that Corp is suggesting that. So it's difficult because what they're saying is that there should be a ramp there. If it's left up to the applicant to apply for a ramp, can this committee not pass it with a request that they put in an application for a ramp?
I think the best we can do, Councillor, our officer will correct me if I'm wrong, is we can draw to the attention of the applicant the comments of Corp. But we certainly can't require a ramp to, we can't condition that.
Thanks, Chair.
If there are no further comments, can I take it, Councillor Sweeney, that you are happy to propose that we accept the recommendation and you, Councillor Northcott, to second it?
I'm very happy.
And we can add in, I suppose, I see no reason why not, Councillor Moffat's concern that the comments of Corp be passed to the applicant with the decision sheet. Does that seem reasonable? Could I see, therefore, those in favour of that with that proviso? And I think that's unanimous. Which means we can move to item 5 this evening, which is the application for the Posh Wash site. Before maybe we open the debate, I think our officer has some pictures of this site, and I think it would be helpful for those to be displayed if that's possible.
So that's the, there's two parts to the application. One is, and they're both retrospective. One is this canopy, the blue canopy that you can see that covers the main car wash area. And the other element is a shipping container, which is in the rear corner of the site. There is actually two shipping containers there. This one that's been there for quite some time, and then the one that is part of this application, which is tucked away into the rear corner of the site. So I'll just take you through a bit of a closer one there, showing the scale of the canopy. This is the neighbouring property who has objected, and her objections are summarised within the report. That's to show you the context, really, that this is a car sales garage. So the car wash has been as such since I think 2009. It received planning permission, and prior to that it was a car sales garage. And just a bit further round, Swift House. Yeah, and that's the photos. Thank you.
Could I just ask, Ms. Clee, if you would go back to the one showing the neighbouring property so that we can get some sense of how close the canopy is to that property. Where is the canopy on that picture?
You can just see it there. So between the boundary with the neighbouring property and the canopy is an area which is used for the valeting of vehicles. So the majority of vehicles go beneath that canopy, and then some others come round to the rear or the side of the site, I suppose, closest to this boundary, and they are they're cleaned inside and out as well. So.
And again, could you just indicate if it's present on that photograph where the shipping container is? And do we know what the shipping container is used for? Is it opened and closed all the time, or?
It's used for the staff members, and apparently for, I don't know whether it is yet, but the intention is that it's to be used by customers who are having their car valeted rather than just cleaned. And that is, I don't know whether you can just about see there in the corner.
And again, could you give us some idea of the distance of that from the curtilage of the adjacent property?
It's probably best if I just show you. I have a site plan, if you just bear with me. Should be coming up now. Yeah, there we go. I'll just enlarge that a little bit. So this here is the bungalow, the property of the objector. So this big blue square is the canopy. This area is the area I talked about where they refer to it as the valeting bay. And that is the container. So there's an existing container there and the proposed one in that corner there. So that, as you can see, is right up to to the boundary with the neighbouring property.
Okay, thank you very much. I note this has been called in by two councillors, both of whom are members of this committee, so I'm going to let them speak to this item first. I don't know in which order they wish to go.
I do have grave reservations about the canopy. The business itself is established, and I think as an established employer, he could have actually had a little bit more concern over the design of that canopy. It is an eyesore, and we live opposite, so we do know what it looks like, to be quite honest. And I think for a business on a site like that, I don't think I can possibly vote for that canopy. And I was mindful for us for a site visit, I'll be perfectly honest. There's 3 containers on there now, and I don't think I'd like to know what's inside the 3 containers, actually. I can understand the one for the lads to have a canteen, a cup of tea and whatever, but I would like to know why they need 3 shipping containers. And it is an eyesore, Chair. Thank you.
Of course, Councillor, you are perfectly entitled to call for a site visit and a vote on that if you wish to do so. If you feel that the evidence that we've seen tonight, the photographs and the plan are not sufficient to determine this. So I'll come back to you on that. But first of all, perhaps Councillor John Williams.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if we considering the site visit, I want to take the time of the committee, but just to indulge me in the history behind this, where the Castletown garage was the main garage with the offices at the front. They downsized and leased the offices to a car rental company who was there for a few years. Then they disappeared, and then they leased some of the land or whatever to this car wash company. And they went through the planning application in 2009, and the reports are there. Environmental health, the officer went through all of the planning issues, and it was given permission for the car wash. Since then, the garage has been sold off to another company who put the side of their garage, the opposite side to Posh Wash. They built a gantry there where they could go and look at cars, repair cars under this gantry. And Posh Wash came along and put this, it's like a giant garden gazebo. It's a tarpaulin with a metal frame. But since then, this is in 2009, the garage has expanded their business, which is good, which we want that to happen, especially on day 34. We want businesses to thrive, and even car washes to thrive and employ people, and it's good for the area in every way. But going back to Posh Wash, really, the business expanded and expanded. And this canopy appeared, and we emailed the officers that we can ask them to put in a planning application, which they hadn't done, but both the garage and for their little workshop and Posh Wash have put planning applications in. So we now need to this now to determine on this planning application, retrospective planning application for this canopy. So it's there as seen. I can go on forever about it. We talked about the fence on the west side, which Posh Wash said they will it's in a really sorry state. As you can see, the white buildings on the left there, they're the houses, flats, 2-story flats in Derwent Place. They put a new fence up there to disguise the container, which you can see about half of the container at the moment. So they are doing that. And I'm just concerned as well, the deterioration of the site that could happen because of its expansion, that tends to leave it in a bad state of not repair, but to clutter about. So I think I'd appreciate a site visit, Mr. Chairman, so members could see what's there and get a feel for the area and what we're about and the concerns that the lady next door has. And they'll explain, I'm sure the developer will explain how they proceed in their day-to-day working at Poshwash. Thank you.
Councillor Burgess.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Following on from what John has just said, looking at the plans here, I'm concerned about this because when they wash cars, you get a lot of spray. And to me, it seems very close to the property, this bungalow that's on the planning here. And I'm wondering, you know, how that would affect the area really, because if they've got a lawn by the look of it in this bungalow, how can they sit out in the summer if they've got cars being sprayed, cleaned, and the spray's coming over the wall or whatever, over the fencing, because there's wind, of course, that brings it across quite a way. And that's one of my concerns, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we've got to be very careful here. The application is very specific. It's not about the nature of the business. It's about the canopy. It's about the shipping container and the timber fence. And that's all it's about. And I think members need to be very clear in their minds that those are the things we're focused on. Now, one of the issues that's been raised by members here is the nature of this canopy and indeed its colour. And the question is whether we feel that that's an appropriate development in this area. And I'll take Councillor Jones first. What I think we should also be thinking about, though, is whether we have sufficient information, and if we have, we should determine that this evening, or whether we feel that, in fact, we need further information to determine this. But Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I would support Councillor Williams and Councillor Williams's request for a site visit. I'd like to be able to see the container and the canopy from the property where the resident has submitted an objection, to be able to see how much that intrudes upon the visual amenity from that property. So I would entirely support it. And I'm aware, unless officers have photos from the property showing if it would be possible to arrange to view it from the property, I would be in full support of that.
I think I'm correct in saying, Councillor, that the only way one could do that, of course, is with permission of the householder themselves. We can't go onto people's property like that. The alternative, I suppose, would be if the business is willing, and again, we would have to have their permission, we could walk around to the back of their curtilage and view the thing from there. Another issue, I suppose, which I'll ask our officers is if members were so minded and thought that it was the somewhat bright colour of this canopy that was the worst part of it, would it be possible to condition the colour? Say we will permit this, but you must paint it a different colour, or is that just simply not possible given the sort of application in front of us?
No, I think that is possible. I don't know whether they would be able to paint it because I think the nature of the material, but we could certainly require them to replace it if we felt that it was only acceptable if it was in perhaps a more recessive colour, a darker colour, like I don't know, dark grey or black or something.
My next question, and again, I ask this simply so that members of the committee are fully aware of the data, is I am correct, am I not, in thinking that were we to have a site visit, this application would go beyond its formal determination time?
Yes, it would. Yeah, they've agreed to an extension of time to the 22nd of October. So yes, it will go past that.
Any further comment from members? Councillor
Can I just say, this isn't just about the lady with the bungalow. We're in Derwent, you can quite plainly see this, a good 6 foot from somebody's bedroom window. And we have actually parked the car, and you can actually see it way above all the fencing. And that's in another street, and that affects the whole of those houses behind. It isn't just one lady who's been affected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sweeney, then Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Chairman. The lady who is complaining about it, it doesn't actually talk about the container or the tent thing, does she? She just talks about it reads like she doesn't actually want a car wash there in the first place. I don't know if that's makes any interest or anything. Also on the map, on the picture we had, her garden had got some sort of rectangular thing next to the fence, which was next to the shipping container. What's that rectangular thing? Is there the garage or something?
I'm afraid I can't answer that because I wasn't the case officer and I've not visited the site. I'm assuming it's some sort of an outbuilding, but whether it's a garage or a shed, and I can't even confirm that it's still there. So, okay. It's still there. Is it? Okay.
Yeah, so it's on the map. It's on here as well as the one there, but the one on the screen is a bit more detail. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Northcott, I think, was going to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern's about the containers. Now, containers are never going to win any design awards in terms of being plonked in the middle of anywhere. And the planning application is for a container. Do the other two containers that I've witnessed on there recently, are those subject of planning permission? Because I think promoting a group of containers is different to allowing one container on a plot of land. If it suddenly grows to 6 containers, it's going to be quite a distraction to people driving past as well. And I'm not sure this is something we should be promoting as a borough, as a temporary business proposition. I think we should be promoting proper buildings where we can. Okay, shipping containers can be used for storage. I appreciate that in places that aren't quite so prominent. But the visual impact of 3 containers is, to be honest, it's a bit like, and I'm a bit embarrassed to say about it actually, about like the centre of loggerheads really. It becomes no identity and it looks quite scruffy, really. So, if the other 2 containers are on site, have they got planning permission? If so, is that forthcoming? I don't think we've got all the information that we need to determine this, Chair, and I'm probably inclined to support a site visit if members are in support of that. Thank you.
Given you've raised a question about the other containers, I'll ask our officer to comment on that, and I think she wants to make a further comment as well.
The other containers don't form part of the application. I don't know why that's the case. I don't know whether in discussions with the case officer they were advised that they'd been there for such a period of time that they were immune from any action. But if they haven't been there for that long and they're not immune from enforcement action, then yes, certainly they do require planning permission. But I'm not sure why they've not come in as part of this application. I just wanted to make the point that a lot of the issues that have been alluded to, and certainly the issues from the neighbour, relate to the operation of a car wash on the site. And as has already been said, it had planning permission in 2009. But that planning permission was subject to a number of conditions. And I think some of those conditions require the submission and approval of details, and I don't think they've ever been received. So there's a breach there, and that they began the operation without having those details approved. And then there are other conditions that require certain activities to take place in certain places within the site. And by the looks of it, I mean, it's not being investigated, but it looks like they're in breach of some of those conditions. So there's certainly things that we can do to investigate and potentially improve the conditions and the impact on the neighbours, but not as part of this planning application. As Councillor Fear said, this application is just for retention of the canopy and the container. And obviously, so members' concerns about the visual impact of those structures is absolutely relevant to consideration of this application. But the issues such as the spray and the impact on the neighbours aren't really for consideration as part of this, because the application doesn't, there's no intensification of the use, and the application doesn't make doesn't exacerbate those issues in any way.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I've just had a read through of the 12-page submission from the local resident who objects to the application, and in there, under one of the reasons for objection is about the container and the canopy, the visual amenity of those two items, how they fit within the local area. We've heard from the two ward councillors that they feel that this is will cause an issue for residents in the local area. I think really we can't determine this without a site visit. So I would just simply back Councillor Williams's call and second that we move for a site visit.
I think given that that's been done, that there's little point in debating this further until we do that. Now, again, I think it's incumbent upon me, chairing this committee, to point out to members that we should determine things if we think we have all the evidence in front of us. So I draw to your attention the photographs we've seen, the plan we've seen. If you think that that is sufficient information to determine this application, you should vote against a site visit. If, on the other hand, you feel that that's insufficient, you should vote for it. Moreover, again, I must reiterate the fact that we must concentrate on what this application is for. So if there is a site visit, it will not be a site visit about the use of this site. It will be a visit about these three items and these three items alone. So if we're clear in our minds about that, I would ask, given it has been proposed and seconded, see those in favour of a site visit to this thing. Again, bear in mind, we will go out of determination time were we to do so. So again, I have to say that I think it's important that members be aware of that. But given that you're now, I hope, I'll look to our officers to see if I've neglected to say anything I should have said. And my officers say, or our officers, I should say no. Therefore, I feel happy in that regard. Could I see those in favour of a site visit? And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. Is that correct? I'll check with our clerk. I see those against site visit. And I see 1. Therefore, we will have a site visit on this item. I don't know if we've got the dates to hand. It will be useful to announce them. But I'm sure they can be emailed to all committee members within this working week to make sure that we're all aware of that. It will indeed, I think, be a Saturday morning. Let us progress to item 6 of our agenda, land adjacent to 68 Westmoreland Avenue, Clough Hall, Kidsgrove. Again, I draw your attention to the fact there is a supplementary on this item, although the recommendation, I believe, remains the same as that printed on the main report. I look to our officers to see if there's any further information we need beyond the supplementary.
No, there's nothing further to report.
And I therefore open the debate. Councillor Maxfield.
Thanks, Chair. It's quite controversial, isn't it, these masts? I think it's a shame, really, that Kidsgrove and its districts certainly need to have this kind of technology installed, even more so since the Town Deal Award of 16.9 million, of which it's been very well publicised, all the projects, you know, the sports centre, the railway, public service hub, etc., etc. And these things, along with everything else, are going to actually be relying on this kind of technology, both in the immediate and the future as it goes on. It's a shame that the company, CK Hutchinson, hadn't perhaps done a bit more research, I suppose, if you like, and been a bit more creative, because certainly if memory serves, and I have seen them around and about anyway, but the similar mast at Western Road Police Headquarters, it's very obvious that it's a mast, but it's actually been very creatively done. And it's actually cunningly disguised as a tree. And I think it's a conifer, if memory serves. So it kind of actually blends in a little bit more with the area. As the Marks and Spencer's, the Woolstanton Retail Park, all has 5G access. So there's the access there for people to be able to tap into, and people perhaps unaware of it when they're doing about their daily business and things. And I think they sort of, you know. Thank you. Heckler alert. It's just one of those things that kind of concerns me, that if we start sort of saying no all the time, that the term back in March of this year, actually, when the award was announced, it was a big front page thing with the local paper that described Kidsgrove and surrounding as left behind, and was welcoming all of this money for all of these projects and the infrastructure and everything else. And I'm kind of a bit concerned that if we don't actually have more of these installations, that term left behind is going to be, well, they've got this lovely new X, Y, and Z, but actually it's got really slow and we can't access it. And I think what people need to be aware of is that with regards to 5G, it's more than just simply speedy internet and a greater download speed on our mobile network systems. You know, we're looking at accessing emergency and key services, energy, water, critical healthcare, and all these smart devices that our homes are being equipped with, both new homes and current homes people are purchasing, are all going to be relying on this more advanced technology. So I think, you know, essentially what I'm kind of sort of saying is so in support of what the officer recommendation is with regards to refuse on its appearance only. I think it's a shame that if we can, you know, is it possible that we can actually, they can come back with a more creative solution with regards to its appearance that would be more acceptable, because I do think that the area and its surrounding is in need of it. So that's all I have to say, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I note that recommendation B speaks of the sighting scale and external appearance. So in other words, what you will be saying is that our refusal, we would probably wish to remove the word sighting and maybe the word scale, but concentrate on external appearance in that regard. Again, I think I've captured your sense correctly there. I invite comment from other members. Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's quite clear these things are here to stay. We see them in the rural area. We see them everywhere now. I think for areas that don't get these in their area, they're going to miss out. And they're not going to have that coverage that residents expect. I think we need to be sending the message that where these things are to be built, whether it's near to housing or sensitive sites, it costs more money to make it so. But I think we should be sending the message that they need to be as sympathetic as possible to the surroundings. It can be done with camouflage and creative schemes. And I think we need to make that line in the sand that this is the sort of thing that we want to see in the future. I'm not for refusing these things. I've seen sites where they've been very well integrated into communities and areas, and I've seen where they stick out like sore thumbs. Again, using loggerheads as an example of the latter, it sticks out like a sore thumb in some parts of loggerheads. But people accept that we need these things now, and I would be happy to support the previous councillor in terms of the recommendations that she seeks. In terms of that, we're not against this because we feel that there's a need, but we need to be able to have a say on how the design and the image is going to present itself, where it's going to be sited in that area. Thanks, Chairman. I think that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I note in the penultimate paragraph of the should prior approval be granted section of our report, it says the proposed mast has a functional and stark appearance, which I think is the nub of your objection and that of Councillor Maxfield. I don't know, do we have a line drawing or a plan of this structure so that we can actually see it?
Right. Okay. So yeah, that is the mast that is proposed in this particular location. It's got quite a large head frame, and I mean, we as officers we have been very much supportive of telecommunication development within the urban area, mindful of the support that the government are giving and the encouragement that the government are giving to improving access and the ability to people to use 5G and earlier versions. So it is unusual, as you will recall, for us officers to recommend refusal. And by recommending refusal on the basis of the scale, sighting and appearance, that's not to say that should a mast which is not quite so visually prominent, it doesn't have such a bulky head frame in that location, wouldn't be supported by officers. It's the combination of the scale of it and its position, because it is not in a location that has any real natural screening. It's not seen against a backdrop of trees. There are trees in the area, but they, as you will see, they're not sufficient of a sufficient height to soften the appearance of it. So, we just have concerns about this particular piece of telecommunications equipment in this location. I can show you some photographs of the area, so you can.
Please do, Mrs. Moulton. I think that would be helpful.
Yes, so bear with me. Right, there we go. Okay, so this is looking towards the site. So I think you'll have seen on that elevation plan showing the mast that it sits against. Well, there's a wall behind it, and that's the wall. So it's towards the far end of this wall. It sits somewhere in front of those trees. So it's within the grass verge between the pavement.
Could I just
and the
ask,
highway.
Mrs. Moulton, when you said it sits there, would the top of the mast, from the position you're looking at, in your judgment, go above those trees at the end of that photograph?
Yes, and the elevation plans demonstrate that. They show the trees. They're supposed to be representations of the actual trees. They're not. They're not just. They're trying to set the context of it. So it's very much taller than those trees. So let me show you the other photos. And I do have some Google Street Scene views looking the other way. So I'll need to come out of this and share those separately. But let me go through the photos first. So so that's looking in the same direction, but more on the same side of the road. So it would sit somewhere here, if you can see the cursor. And could
I ask the question, would it now stand higher than the tree we see on the junction
possibly
there?
not, but maybe similar height because of the perspective that is much closer to where you're standing. I think maybe maybe it will poke above. It's a bit difficult to say, but yeah, I think it wouldn't stand as high above the top of the tree, if at all, from that perspective. But it would stand above the height of the trees, which are closer to it, which you can see there. So yeah, another view looking in the similar direction, and I think, yeah, that's really more to the right of where the mast is. So the mast is actually off the photo there. So I've got some other images to show you that give you a close up perspective of the mast, and I look from the other side. So bear with me. I will share those when they open up. Here we go. Oops. Right, so yeah, this is a Google Street View image. So the mast would stand somewhere here, and it would it will extend above the height of those trees, above the height of that other ridge of that property by quite a way at 18 meters. So yeah, it would fill possibly the entirety of that image. So this is the next photo, or the next street scene image is quite close up to the position of the mast. It would sit in somewhere here. So you would just see the bottom of the mast. You would be nowhere near the head, seeing the head frame in that image. The head frame will be considerably higher than the top of that image. So you'll see there are some trees in the area, but they're not of a sufficient height to properly soften the appearance of that. As I say, these masts are quite a common feature in the streetscape, but the bulk of the head frame of this sets it apart from many of the slender slimline monopoles that we have given consent for or prior approval for in the past. So this is slightly different. It is bulkier, and because of the topography of the land and the lack of natural screening, it will be visually prominent, and that's the concern that we've expressed, which has resulted in the recommendation of refusal.
Thanks very much. Councillor Williams, then Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The old debate we had many years ago about mass sharing, conclusion we came to it at that time. But we seem to have, I think the last one was at Silverdale, which I didn't particularly like the positioning of it. And I dare say that the cost of the underground wiring to these masts, these companies take into consideration. But one is the mass sharing. But again, as we go into the new technology, has been spoken about by other councillors, is that why these masts are getting bigger? Is it the new technology, or is it because of the mass sharing? Doesn't sound like the mass sharing, but is it the technology that they have to have better equipment in those masts that, you know, we tried to describe this one as a tree. I looked for it. I don't know if it's still there off the M6. At at least it's there, back of there. I couldn't see it, so it may have worked. You couldn't, but yeah, it looks horrible. It does really. Whether it's disappeared or not, I don't know. But you can't disguise them. But really, it's a mass sharing side to it, and a better side at the cost to the developer. Thank you.
If you fancy a disguised one, Councillor Williams, if you drive up the A6 past Lancaster coming into Bolton Sands, there's one on the right-hand side.
Come back, Mr. Chairman. There's one at Stockton Brook that's inside a clock tower. Now, the last time I went past there, the clocks never worked, but I'm sure the mast was inside was supposed to be working. It doesn't look out of place because it's the same brick as the new build properties. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst we're doing a tour of masts, there's actually one much closer in Keele, on the junction as you turn down Keele Road into the village off the bypass. It's camouflaged, it's very difficult to see, but actually it's probably only about 6-7 meters high, not 18 meters. For me, I would support the officer's recommendations. I think 18 metres is exceptionally high for a mast. I just did a quick bit of looking up, and a typical street light, residential street light, is about 6 metres max. So we're talking, what, 3 street lights in height? So I think it might possibly, I think it probably does poke above the tree that we were looking at, the larger of the trees located a distance away from where this mast is going, but certainly the trees around that, it would poke quite high above, which I think limits the options for camouflage when it's got nothing to camouflage against. So I would support the officer's recommendation. Again, it's purely about the height of the mast. I think the height of the mast is too high in order to be screened. I think it's unlikely to ever gain any screenage with the typical growth of trees. And I would agree with previous comments that there probably are better locations, or if a shorter mast could be in that location, then that could potentially be acceptable, but purely on the grounds that the mast is just too high with no screenage.
I'm wondering now whether, given the tenor of the debate, what we should do. Well, I'll move quite soon to recommendation A, because I don't think there's any controversy about recommendation A, or I'm guessing there isn't. Recommendation B, I think we're all saying that we're not actually that worried about the site. We're worried about the scale and appearance of this structure. So maybe, in fact, what we should do is strike the word siting from recommendation B, which is sending a message to the company concerned that, you know, it's the appearance and the size of this thing that we're worried about, and that we think that, you know, were they to come back with a more appropriate design, we might look kindly upon them. I don't know what people feel about that, but if Councillor Maxfield, for example, was to propose that we do that, when we come to that section, because what I'm going to do now, I think, is, can we first have a vote on recommendation A, that prior approval for this development is required? I think that's unanimous. So let's move on to recommendation B. And the question is now whether we want to stay with the report or alter this wording. I think Mrs. Moulton wishes to make a comment.
Well, I just wanted to assist members that I think it's a quite simple change that could be made to the recommendation to capture what you think is the thoughts and views of members. So, yes, like you say, you could omit the word citing and word it such as the siting and external appearance of the proposed development in this location will be harmful to scale and external appearance. You're right. I said the word that we didn't want to be included in the recommendation. Yeah, the scale and external appearance of the proposed development in this location would be harmful to the existing appearance of the area, etc. So I think that is what you have in mind.
Are you happy to propose that, Councillor Maxfield?
I am. Yes,
And nodding behind, I think Councillor Northcott would second that. So I'm going to take a vote on that. If it falls, we'll fall back to the original recommendation. But could I see a vote on recommendation B worded as, well, simply with the word citing struck from what's there? And I would argue a comma as well. I think that is unanimous. Let us progress to item 7. Again, there is a supplementary on item 7 I draw your attention to. And there is a revised recommendation on that supplementary, so please be cognizant of that fact. Little bit of an end of an era for some of us, I suppose. And I look to our officers to see if there's any further information we require other than that on the supplementary.
No, there's nothing further.
In that case, I open the item for debate. And as I hear no calls or comments, I'm going to proceed to a vote on this. Again, it's a two-part vote. So first of all, could I see those in favour of the recommendation that prior approval is required for this development? That, I think, is unanimous. And now And again, I draw to your attention that what we are voting on is the recommendation on the supplementary report, not the main report. Could I see those in favour of that recommendation? And that again is unanimous. And you can pass to item 8 of our agenda. Again, I look to our officers to see if there's any further information on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that we're in progress and we have made some steps forward since the last meeting where we discussed this item in terms of pursuing the Section 106 contributions. Clearly, it's a sensitive matter and we aren't able to discuss in precise detail as this could end up in a future enforcement case. But progress is being made.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of protecting the council's position, I only have one question. I'm quite happy if officers are unable to answer it, but could you tell me who the council is taking action against, please?
At the moment, we're sort of speaking to the development side of that equation. So we're looking to see what opportunities are there in any future action. But we will keep our options open as we pursue the case. Thank you.
Any further comment from members? Are we content that this report be received? In that case, let's progress to item 9. And again, I draw your attention to the fact there is a supplementary on item 9, which is the land at Doddlespill, Betley. Again, I look to our officer to see if there's any further information.
No, there's nothing further. We had hoped, well, that there would have been the opportunity to discuss with the Environment Agency whether there was any, whether they could assist us in confirming whether condition 7 of the planning permission had been breached. That condition requires that only inert waste is to be imported onto site, and we're waiting for them to confirm that whether they consider that has been complied with or not. And there's some suggestion that they're not satisfied that the material is inert. Whether it's harmful or not is another matter, but it may not be strictly in compliance with the requirements of the condition, which is condition 7. But as set out within the supplementary report, it does seem pretty clear that the requirements, that if they comply with condition 6, which requires the works to finish, well, actually condition 6 asks for the construction and completion of the works to construct and complete the track shall cease by 1st of November 2021. It is very clear that won't be possible. The extent of the works needed to complete the track is such that it couldn't be done by that date. So any works beyond it's likely that if the track is to be completed, then that would be in breach of the condition unless an application came in to vary that condition again and extend that time frame a little further. And obviously, I'm not wishing to encourage members to reach a view that could be seen as predetermined in an application, but you may wish to express an opinion as to what you consider would be required to satisfy you that an extension of that time frame is justified.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moulton. I think you summarised the thoughts of quite a few people in this room in what you said. This is, in my opinion, a disappointing report. Disappointing in a variety of ways, actually, and not just in terms of the applicant, but also in terms of the Environment Agency, who seem to be no friends of this borough. But we are where we are. I open comment. Members, Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. without at risk of appearing as predetermining anything. It's kind of a little bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it, in respect to this? If the track hasn't been completed by the 1st of November, then why haven't we had any dialogue from the landowner to say that A, there's been a problem in completing the track, and B, what would be the plan to complete the track, which seems by the information set out here that is absent. Clearly, like you, Chair, I'm really disappointed with this. It seems to be, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then it changes yet again. So I don't know how, without having the evidence to say why we should consider an extension, or even a simple request would have been nice. Frustration doesn't encapsulate the feeling, really, to be honest, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, then Councillor Moffat. Sorry, Councillor, your hand is occluded from me. That's
Yeah. All right. Do you want to go, Sue? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And it's smoke and mirrors, isn't it? This, we gave permission for the track to enhance the site, and was that purposely done? Asking the question, is it purposely done smoke screen for other activities to go on the site? Because, we've gone down the route of trying to help this developer or landowner, help him in numerous ways. But a lot of it relies on the Environment Agency. As you said, they don't seem a friend at this moment in time. So, I don't think, why should we extend it? He wanted that, we give him that so he could carry on with this other work. And now we're coming back for the same old argument. He hasn't got time, so it goes on and on and on. And again, it's we're working with our taxpayers' money, but I think it's well spent if we do take action against these people and say, well, no, enough's enough. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible, seeing as the opinion is that this isn't going to be finished by the 1st of November, is it possible to compel him to put out a plan of action, which we could then consider at the next meeting, so that, I know it feels like kind of extending more, but you're anticipating it won't be done, so there's going to be a breach. Is it possible, before there's a breach, to ask for an update from him with them identifying exactly what it is that they think they can achieve and when?
I think I'd be right in saying there's nothing stopping us writing to the landowner. I don't think we can compel him to reply or anything like that, but if this committee was minded that a letter is sent, I think a letter could be sent. I look to our officers, but I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yes, that's correct. A letter can be sent on behalf of the planning committee, asking for that information. As officers, we'd be very much seeking to avoid any breach of that condition and stating that he shouldn't be in breach of that condition. He should cease any activity towards the completion of the track by the 1st of November. And that if he wishes to go beyond that, he shouldn't do that unless he's got planning permission. And obviously, such an application, we would expect to include a case justifying why it's necessary and setting out a time frame and justification for that time frame, to give some level of confidence that it can be completed within the time frame that they're asking for. I suppose it's fair to the applicant to advise that when the application was submitted to vary that condition, they did initially ask for a much longer period, but during the course of the application and discussions that took place, the time frame was reduced, and I think that was reduced in agreement by the applicant, that he wasn't arguing that we were giving him a date that he couldn't possibly comply with. And there has been dialogue, but it has always been initiated by, as far as I'm aware, by officers of the council in visiting the site and monitoring the compliance with the terms of the planning permission. So it's not fair to say that there's been no dialogue, but it's certainly, to my knowledge, he hasn't come forward. He hasn't got on the front foot and come to us to say, look, it doesn't look like I'm going to comply with this. I need to discuss a plan of action, a way forward. So, yeah.
Given what you said, Mrs. Moulton, I'm just wondering if that, so that the council's position is not compromised, that a letter could be sent, but the letter could be sent with the question, do you think that you will be able to comply with this condition? And leave it at that. So in other words, rather than conceding that there won't be compliance, we are saying, are you going to comply? Which holds our position that this ought to be done by the beginning of November.
Yes, certainly we could ask that question. I'm sure that he will seek to understand whether any forthcoming application which sought to extend that time frame stood any chance of gaining approval. And I'm getting the sense that you're not convinced that there is any justification for that extension, but you're open to hearing such a case. And
I
without
think that would be a question for the next update. What I would say as well, and I look to members to see if they're in agreement, is that when we say the recommendation is a further update be presented to members, that we add to that a further update, including possible enforcement options be presented to members, so that we're not just talking about maybe, but what in fact we can do, and the committee has some chance of in fact deciding on the course of action it wishes to take. Councillor Williams, I don't know if Councillor Moffat wished to come back. She did indicate she wished to come back. So
yeah, it was just really about the language. So rather than a kind of, hello, are you expecting to finish by the 1st of November? Actually a letter which is reminding him or her that there is an expectation that this will be completed on the 1st of November.
yeah, I'm sure we can rely on our officers if we so decide to phrase a letter in those terms, and I quite agree with you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're only a month away from that date, November the 1st, less than a month. People have visited the site, officers have visited the site. How far has he gone? Has he gone halfway, 3/4 of the way to complete this? Is it physically possible to put that road in a month? You know, it seems to me that it's a very, very short period of time. It was agreed on going back. We did this on the applicant's wishes, and now we're coming back to we're back to square one. So is it possible to finish it in a month?
Certainly the judgment of the officer that visited the site, which was in conjunction with the Environment Agency, was that it wasn't feasible to complete the track within the time frame by the 1st of November. I can't confirm how close he is to completion. I haven't got that information. We did have information when we received the application early in the year for the variation of the condition, which extended the time frame to the 1st of November. And from recollection, it was a relatively short length of track that was left to be completed, but it was the most difficult part of the track in terms of the drainage issues and levels, I think was an issue. So in terms of the percentage of the entire length of the track, it's a fairly small percentage, but in terms of the amount of work involved, I think it is more significant than the proportion of the track might appear on the face of it. So yeah, I can't give you any clear information as to if they work flat out between now and the 1st of November, how close they would be to completing it. I don't know whether that information is something we could establish or even have an educated guess about.
Perhaps
yeah, it's not completed.
If the relevant officer concerned is contacted and the length of the incomplete track, I think there are two things we could do there. I think it would be useful perhaps to share that with members of the committee so that we could get an email of that. And I think that potentially that will be a relevant consideration for the next report. And therefore, again, I think it will be useful to have that data in the report next time round. Not only the length of track, but perhaps the proportion that length constitutes of the entire track, so that we can get some feel for what's going on there. Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I would be really interested as well to see whether or not there has been any progress at all being made, because it is frustrating, and I hear what other councillors are saying and what the officers are saying, but actually if progress is being made, then it seems counterproductive just to stop that from happening, because I think what we want to see is that completed. And I'm not suggesting we give any easy options there or kind of get out of jail free card kind of thing, but if we can see that if they're not just sitting back and ignoring all of this, and that some progress is made, that might also help us to make any decisions at the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Let's see where we've got to. I see if members are in agreement with this, that we ask our officers to draft a letter to the landowner, reminding them in firm terms of the deadline that's coming up. That we have a further report on our meeting the 9th of November, and in that report we are given the length of the track to be completed, the proportion that is of the whole, and that in that update we also have an outline of the options for enforcement in front of us if the 1st of November date is not met, so that the committee then can see in front of it the sorts of actions it could take, and indeed be able to vote on those actions. Have I missed anything out? I look to members. Indeed, yes. If we can have some at that meeting, if we could have some photographic evidence of what's present, that would also be useful. I agree. So I think our officer's written all that down. I hope that's the case. So otherwise, I've got to remember it. Are we content with that set of proposals that I've outlined? Could I just see a show of hands for the record to make sure that we're all on side? And indeed we are. I think that's unanimous. That brings us, well, formally that appears to mean, hang on, no. That brings us indeed to our last item. I've got the page wrong, which is any urgent business, and defined by the relevant section of the relevant act. I have been informed of none. I look to our officers to see if they know of any. And they don't. In that case, I will bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you to anyone on YouTube for watching us this evening. And I wish you a safe journey home if you're here, and a very pleasant rest of the evening if you're not.